times you are told that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a very complex one. Many times you are told that you can't draw it in black and white. You can so easily draw it in black and white. It is such a simple conflict. A real estate conflict with very clear black and very crystal clear white. When someone steals your car, you are not in a position to put conditions to return your car. First of all, you have to get back your stolen car. And the Palestinians' car was stolen by Israel, and it must be returned without any conditions.
They have no legal typical
The Israeli occupation.
dialogue of peace. Dangerous people. Dangerous people to the future.
Let them go to vote and collect it.
Go home.
No, you have no place.
Now we have peace.
I think that one woman left.
They went behind the wall. Speak the separating wall.
The Israeli occupation is not the most brutal occupation in history. It's even not the longest occupation in history. But it's by far the only occupation in history in which the occupier presents himself as the victim. Not only the victim, but the only victim around. No other one deserves to be called the victim except of the occupier. This is unprecedented. I can't recall one occupation in history which the occupier is totally convinced that he is the victim and he deserves all the sympathy and he deserves all the defense of the world. And his security is the only issue. And the occupied people should take care of his security, which is also unheard of. This occupation, which lasts now for almost 50 years, is not about to end. Far from it. And we better realize it. We better realize that the chances that there will be a change within the Israeli society are rather small, if exist at all. We better face it. Israeli society, deeply brainwashed like those people here, totally ignorant about what's going on in their backyard, carrying some very deep-rooted beliefs which enable them to live in peace with this criminal occupation. Mainly three sets of beliefs. The first belief, which is very deep-rooted in Israel, is that we Israelis are the chosen people. And if we are the chosen people, we have the right to do whatever we want. International law applies to any country in the world, not to Israel, because we are a different case. We are the chosen people. This very deep-rooted belief, if you'll stretch under the skin of almost every Israeli, you will find it there, religious and seculars, goes hand-to-hand with another very deeply rooted belief, and this is that we, the Jews, are the biggest victim in history and the only victim in history.
What about the Syrians?
As the late Golda Meir phrased it once in this unbelievable way, that after the Holocaust, the Jews have the right to do whatever they want. That's a very deep-rooted belief, which again enables us Israelis to think that we have the right to do whatever we want.
Why do you say us Israelis? Get out of Israel if you don't like it.
And the third set of beliefs is obviously, and I'll be careful here, that the Palestinians are, how will I say it, not exactly human beings. Or not exactly human beings like us. I wrote once that we treat them like animals, and I got so many protest letters from animal rights organizations. Rightly so, rightly so. So I don't want to compare it to anything. But this dehumanization of the Palestinians enables us Israelis to feel so good about ourselves. to be so convinced that the Israeli army is the most moral army in the world. You know, many times I try to tell my Israeli friends, maybe the IDF is the second moral army in the world. Maybe the army of Luxembourg is the most moral army in the world. I mean, you know, an army who killed 500 children last summer in Gaza, maybe it's the second moral army in the world. An Air Force who killed 500 women last summer in Gaza, maybe it's the second moral army in the world. But no, Israel will get deeply offended. How can you dare to think that Israel's army is not the most moral army in the world? Israelis are deeply convinced in it. And what helps them to be convinced in it is the fact that killing Palestinians is not really a violation of human rights, because there are something different, which I don't want to define here, which enable us not only to continue so many years in this blindness, but also to be so self-content, so convinced that we are the right ones. 6 billion people of the world are wrong, and 5 million Jews in Israel are right. Not one single country in the world recognized the Israeli occupation. Not one single country in the world. Even not Micronesia, by the way, Israel's second ally. And still, Israelis are deeply convinced that this occupation was opposed on us, was forced on us. We didn't want it. Who wants it? It's only about our security. It's only about our existence. We are always in a terrible danger. Existential danger, a superpower, a regional superpower. Complaints about security, while the life of the Palestinians is in danger 100 times more. But who cares about the Palestinian security? Have you ever heard a discourse, a discussion when we deal to the issue of security? Have you ever heard someone talking about the security of the Palestinian people?
Or the Syrian now.
And here we come to this situation right now, in which incitement in Israel got to climaxes that are really starting to endanger even the Jewish society. The scenes of the last days puts a huge question mark about the holy democracy in the Middle East. When you see one lynch after the other, day after day, the most brutal lynches in the streets of our cities, scenes that were never seen before, you understand that something goes wrong also for the Jewish majority in Israel. Because Israel is one of those unique states which possesses 3 regimes. I don't know any other country in the world which possesses 3 regimes, not one. In the front, there is this liberal democracy for the Jewish citizens, quite a clear democracy, even though it's now being questioned more and more so, with more and more cracks, but still one can define it as a democracy. But some of you might know by now that you can't be half pregnant. Either you are pregnant or you are not. And you can't be half democratic. I don't know one country in the world which is presenting itself as a democracy, while in its backyard there's one of the most brutal and cruel tyrannies on earth today, because the military occupation in the West Bank and the siege on Gaza are by far one of the most cruel regimes in the world today. So the second regime is the apartheid regime in the occupied territories. I never claimed, by the way, that Israel is an apartheid state, not yet, but it contains an apartheid system in its occupied territories. Because if it walks like apartheid, if it behaves like apartheid, it is apartheid. Because if 2 peoples share 1 piece of land, and 1 people gains all the rights in the world, and the other people don't get any right in the world, this is apartheid, no other way to call it. No other way to call it. And the third regime,
What do? You spit on an IPM soldier? That's your way of behaving?
The third regime, which shouldn't be forgotten, is the regime toward the Israeli Arabs, as we call them, the Palestinians who are Israeli citizens, who are full citizens of Israel. Formally, they gain equal rights, but they are deeply discriminated, as we all know. This is the third regime which contains Israel, or Israel's regime. As I try to claim, this cannot be perceived as a democracy, by all means not, because of its backyard. Now, the situation of occupation is not going to end soon, because the Palestinians are as isolated as maybe never before, as weak as never before, as divided as never before. And Israel in this time is in one of its strongest positions ever. Many times when you look at the relations between Israel and the United States, one could ask himself, who is exactly the superpower between the two? Who is in the pocket of whom? Who dictates to whom? And many times I ask myself, does it really serve the American interest to support and to finance blindly this brutal occupation for so many years? To support it automatically? Do really the American taxpayers wish to finance this occupation, this brutality? Do they want to finance another war in Gaza, another attack with 1,000 women and children killed? Is this part of the American values? But we in Israel can do very little about it. Because, as you know, Israel in the last years turned to become more and more nationalistic, more and more racist, more and more orthodox, with very, very little tolerance to different and alternative voices, in times in which the two-state solution is, in my view, dead. The settlers won. They did anything possible to kill the option of any kind of peaceful settlement in the Middle East, and they succeeded. With 600,000 settlers, each of them violating the international law, each of them, every settler, every single settler violates the international law, but with a quantity of 600,000, I don't see any Israeli leader at any time evacuating 600,000 settlers. And without evacuating all the settlers, there is no viable Palestinian state. And therefore, we should start to adjust ourselves to the new reality in which the two-state solution was killed by Israel and has no chance anymore. And then comes the question, what is the alternative? And there is only one alternative, and this is the one-state solution. It's not an easy solution. I have no illusions about it, but it's the only game which is in town. Those Israelis who were talking for decades about the Jewish state, they should have done something about it and put an end to the occupation, because you can't have it both. You can't eat the cake and leave it complete. You can't maintain the occupation and claim that you want a Jewish state with a Jewish majority and claim that it is a democracy. It doesn't go together. It's either a Jewish state or a democratic state. It doesn't go together, for sure not as long as the occupation continues. And therefore, the struggle, the discourse must be, I think, from now on, a very simple one. Equal rights. That's all. And I want to hear the Israeli answer to this. What do you say about equal rights? Why not equal rights? Because you are the chosen people? Because God promised you the land?
Of peace, that they won't kill us, and they won't
us.
butcher us.
The victims. They won't kill us. They won't kill us. 2,000 were killed in Gaza. They won't kill us. Kill us. Holocaust. 3 more.
You would have made a good podcast.
The Israeli paranoia should be treated by professionals.
Everybody,
Would you mind
so short,
sitting
and I want to make sure that we get questions. The ushers are going to come through now to collect your cards. Gideon is going to keep speaking, but I want to make sure I have your cards and get some time at your Q&A.